Sarah Faith Gottesdiener, thanks so much for doing this. For talking, we're talking business in 2025. We're talking good energy, non-social media, email lists. Like
Yeah.
we're party people here with this stuff.
Hardcore party people nerding out together.
That's what I do, as you know. And looking through some of your stuff, I love seeing like the breadcrumbs of nerdiness, like because I found on your website that it was like 60% of your income comes from your email list or something like that.
Yes,
Like I found that.
yes, yes. Is it okay if I tell my story of email list?
Of course. Yeah, I was gonna get to it, but yes, do it.
Yeah, because I'm right with you in terms of really focusing on your newsletter, on your email list. You know, for me in my business, the first thing I focus on is relationships. You know, it's
Hmm.
like I love the folks who take my classes. I love the folks who support my work. I've worked with people for, going on a decade. I started my business in 2012 and I switched to newsletter when this is like kind of, it's like embarrassing a little bit because I'm similar to you. I think we have a similar background in that we're both creatives, we're both artists. You know, I feel like maybe you have a background in like punk.
Absolutely.
I used to play in punk bands and noise
Cool.
bands, like very DIY, very just have the show in your backyard, like just do
Hmm.
the thing, put the zine out with typos, like just create, just create. And so that's really like the energy and the ethos that I come from. And I just was creating, I just was making. I have never taken a business class, I've no idea about I learned about quarters. Like I was running my business for like 9 years and I hired a coach and she was like, "What's your Q1 plan?" And I was like, What's
What?
Q1?
Right,
Like, what
exactly.
are you talking about?" So anyway, the reason why I started a newsletter is the algorithm in Instagram went to non-chronological.
Mm.
And at that time I was teaching, I was seeing clients one-on-one, I was selling my work and my art and my design. And I thought, oh, I am on a platform that is controlling what I can share, what I can show. I need to have my people in one place that I own, that I control, where I can let them know when my books are open or when I'm coming to their town. Very similar to a touring band. It's like
Yeah.
you need to let your people know. And I started my newsletter. So I think it was in 2016, and there were 80 people on it. There
Yeah.
are 80 people on it. And I remember thinking, wow, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because if you get 80 people in a room, that's a party.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. In social media terms, if you get 80 people to see your thing, that's like a big day with how the algorithms are these days and stuff, or 80 people to click on anything. So 80 people that you're able to like at that stage when you started that, like that's huge. So yeah, wherever people are in whatever stage they're at, if it's 10 people in front of you, that's 10 people.
That's 10 people. I had a client once and I owe it when I teach this, I tell folks, well, maybe wait until you have at least like 50 people on your newsletter, maybe 100 people to start sending it out regularly. But my client was like, she's a writer, and she said to me, wow, I have 50 people, like 50 people at a book reading. That's like a sold out bookstore. Like
Yeah.
that's a
Oh yeah.
full packed house. So I think one thing I want to side note is that I think in this social media era when there are YouTube stars with 1 million, subscribers and an Instagram that has 100,000 followers is now seen as like small. These are people. Like if they're not, let's hope they're not bots, but these
Sure.
are these are human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't to run a business and to support yourself, the average human needs less than you think you do. And it's also quality over just random people. And so it's like focus on your people, focus on finding the right people. It's much better to have 1,000 people on your newsletter who really get you and really understand and are interested in what you have to share and say than 10,000 who don't know who you are, who are going to unsubscribe every time they get a newsletter from you, you know? So yeah, there's all of that. So I started, anyway, let me hop to now. So I started it in 2016. I really invested in my newsletter by sharing great resources.
What were you using in 2016?
MailChimp,
Of course. Yeah.
because it was free.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
It was free. And then we started paying in MailChimp. Right now we use Kit, but I'm actually thinking of trying to find another server. That's the other thing. If someone wants to create like the perfect newsletter, because it's like server or it's not quite, there's not like one that's checks all my boxes. That's all I'm going to say.
Right. Oh yeah.
So anyway, we switched to Kit a couple years ago, and now I'm once again looking for another. Could just be my commitment phobe. I don't know. But yeah, so then in about, I want to say 2021, strategically, I thought to myself, okay, let's really test this business-wise. Let's create offerings that are newsletter only, that I don't share on my podcast. I don't share on social media. I don't share anywhere else, just to my newsletter subscribers. And I began using segmentation, and I began using more strategic marketing. And that's where I got those numbers from. It was long enough to be like, oh, I literally sold something like 6 offerings, and no one ever heard about it except for my newsletter subscribers. And that's where I got that amount and those numbers. I'm like, oh, I can really just focus on sharing with my amazing subscribers who I love. And it feels fun to share with, and I don't have to share on social media.
But you do social media though, right? I mean, you are still active on Instagram, right?
Yeah, but we think she might be coming to an end there.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really like Substack.
Okay.
I really like the energy there. You know, I think probably a lot of people who are tuning into this, similar to me, are introverts, are maybe highly sensitive, maybe, and this is the main thing, you know, at the end of the day, I just want to do my work, and I want to do it well. And I don't want to feel like I have to, this is where the punk rock thing comes in, Seth. Social media, you have to so-called like play by their rules. You have to create reels and dance and like do all these things. And the punk rock Ernie and the person who's like an adult is like, I'm too grown up for this shit. Like, I don't, and the artist in me is like, I don't want to have to contort how I want to share, what I want to share, just like hoping that an algorithm will pick me. I don't want to have to pay to play. Like, I don't want to have to do all that. And so I think more and more people are waking up to that, and they're like, we're done. I just want to be an artist. I just want to be an educator. I just want to like connect with people. I just want to do my work. And how can I do that in the easiest way? Well, it's focusing on your newsletter and on email marketing instead of just throwing pixels into the void and hoping you get some kind of response. It's very energetically depleting.
Sure. Yeah, the idea too of I keep coming back to like how, you know, how difficult is it to gain 1,000 followers on Instagram? And the next time you send out something, you might hit 100 of them. But if you have 100 people on your email list, you're going to hit 100 people. And like, it's a lot easier to get 100 people on your email list. Like the energy required to that. Because it's not so much, to your point, you're not making these videos. You're not doing this new trendy thing that is big on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. Like it can be so much more peaceful as well. The pace of it is just like you could send that newsletter once a week. And it works. Like you don't have to post 3 times a day, like some social media expert is shouting about on whatever on every platform to do. Like you send an email once a week.
My big aha too came. I don't know if you saw this bit of news. I can't remember when it was last year, but it was sometime, I believe, in autumn, when James Blake, the musician, posted on Instagram.
Yes.
At that, like he's like, people aren't seeing my posts. I can't connect with my audience. And I thought to myself, if James Blake has reached the point where he's like this peaceful man who's like one of the most famous musicians currently, has reached the point of like such frustration that he's posting about this, I was like, this is like the algorithm is squashing everybody, if he's suffering, if he's seeing the impact of
Mm-hmm.
this. And so I think we're really seeing a call to own your website, own your SEO, create your, like, focusing on the things you can control
Yeah.
is like simple math and basic witchcraft. So it's like, just focus on what you can control and what you can do well.
Mm-hmm.
And similar to your point about posting on social media 3 times a day or having to make a video when maybe you don't, I get a lot of clients who don't want to be perceived. They're like, don't
Sure.
perceive me. I get it. I get it.
Sure.
I work with people like this, and I try to help them energetically become more congruent and coherent and more protected, so they can be perceived, which is an important piece of running a business. But when you are focusing on your newsletter, you also get to have access to data that other sources you don't have business-wise. So you can see, X amount of people clicked on this link. In marketing, they call it A/B testing. When I sent out this headline, more people clicked on it, or this newsletter got this response. And it also helps us in a newsletter course that I teach. I talk a lot about the minimum viable product, meaning what's the least amount of effort and energy you can put into something and get a really great return and get a really great response. Because I think also people who are just beginning to be creators, they're like, do I have to spend 20 hours on this newsletter? Do I have to effort? Do I have to work? And you get to play with your energetics. You get to play with what you put out over time in a newsletter, and you get feedback over time through data that you don't get with social media, or even with I have a podcast, even with podcast analytics. Like the analytics for a newsletter are much more robust. And if you are going to be running a business, you are going to have to, at some point, or if you're a creator, you're going to have to look at those analytics and sort of start to put the pieces together. And that will just make your life easier.
Sure. And it's not even, I think too, a lot of creative people can be turned off by the idea of analytics, stats, numbers. At the same time, if you want to pay your rent, it helps to know some of the stuff. But yeah, just the click data is so powerful. Or just like sending an email that has a button in it instead of just the text link. Or
asking your people what they want from you.
Or
you can
that.
do that with email. Like, do you want more on punk rock? Do you want more on plants? Like, what do you want from me? And then you can use that to make your life easier.
I would also say too, because I people getting started in the newsletter game is I'll see bands start to do this because they're wising up a little bit, but they're like, yeah, we're just gonna send an email every couple months. And it's like, no, please. Because when we all got on social media, we thought nothing of posting multiple times an hour sometimes. Like if there was an award show or something.
Twitter was like,
we never went on Twitter and said, hey, I hope I'm not going to be too spammy. And everyone's afraid sending emails that they're going to be too spam. I don't want to be too salesy. No. People signed up for your email. Like they want to hear from you. Now, maybe don't start out sending 2 emails a day or daily. No, don't do that. But like once a week, like to get in the habit and the routine of that. That's just 50 sometimes a year versus I have to post on social media 4 times a day on multiple platforms. And it's like doable. Like you just, I think about it too, I sum it up this way too for a lot of artists. Like all that stuff that you put up on social media last week that no one saw.
Yeah.
Just take some of that and put it in your newsletter for some people to see it.
1,000%. Or like, if someone really, if you're a band, let's talk about, musicians. If you're a musician or a band, people want to know the behind the scenes. They want to know, what was I eating when I made this record? What was I listening to? What books were I reading? Can you share a 1-minute clip of a outtake of your record, or like what my favorite gear for this, session was? Like people want to know, like people are curious. If they're signing up to interact with you, they're like, oh, what mic is this person using? And like, honestly, they might even want to know like what lipstick shade you're wearing. Like, you know, like
Oh yeah.
you can just share, and
Mm-hmm.
people, if they're signing up, they want to know. It's like a relationship. You can share about your insights. You can share about also hot tip musicians or any creators. People want to know what you struggled with and
Mm.
how you overcame it and how you dealt with it when you're like, oh, you know, I was writing this record and I got writer's block and I had a freak out and I had a mini existential crisis and here's what I did to get out of it. They want to know that you're a human being. They want to, you know, and I think that's also this, as we get more and more digital, as people become lonelier, the rise of people wanting to interact with others, human to human, heart to heart, is going to be that much more valuable. And that's like really, really important that I'm trying to keep in mind as I move forward. And there are ways that you can easily share in your newsletter these little bits of humanity. You know, it doesn't have to be a sales pitch. You can literally, that's what I teach. You're just sharing.
Yeah. Yeah, the stories aspect of it, to your point of like sharing, like rather than the commodity of, hey, I have a new album out. To your point, the writer's block thing, when Rick Rubin put out that recent book, that I completely forget about right
The
now.
creative act.
The Creative Act. Yeah. I mean, we saw a million clips from that, and they were all talking about the stories. He was telling the stories of, I don't know, someone in one band that like had writer's blocks. So they opened up a book and like found something, and like that became this verse and all that. Like, that's compelling. That's the story, rather than my new CD is available for pre-order. Like, that's the thing too, is like we've seen it modeled by so many bad newsletters. Here's a thing for sale. Here's a buy button, and that's it. And it's like, yeah, if you do that, yeah, you will have a 10% open rate. I talked to a ton of bands about that. My newsletters no one opens them. Well, because they're boring. Because you only email people when you have something to sell. Instead of leading with the story about the thing, about the tour. Like, going back to your point too of the stories, is how many media outlets are out there that take the stories from the bands, from the artists, from the photographers. Here's your 10 things how to do this. Here's your top 10 albums, this and that. They take them. I saw just a couple days ago, there was a drummer who posted his top 10 albums on Instagram. All these music websites took that Instagram post, put it on their site, and talked about like, oh, here's this person's 10 favorite albums. Now, all those sites, 10 sites, sold ads, sent it in their newsletter. They made money off of it. Meanwhile, like only 5% of that person's audience saw it on Instagram to begin with. Like people want your stories. And if they didn't, all these outlets wouldn't be embedding your posts anyway.
1,000%. 1,000%. Yeah. Outtakes,
Yeah.
like photos of the recording, you know, your inspiration, what you were wearing, what you went through, what was the easiest song to come up with, like why, like there's 9 trillion million very easy ways to connect with people without having to like sit down and design something. You know, like I think people make things harder than they have to be. And like in energy work, when I teach energy work, often people think they have to effort, they have to strain, they have to be someone different than who they are. And it's like, no, it's as simple as breathing. It's as simple as having this conversation we're having, like you're having a dialogue with people who want to hear from you. And if they don't want to hear from you, they will unsubscribe. And that's okay. It's like how I've unsubscribed. Like it's nothing personal. Maybe I just don't want a certain email, you know, but if like I was talking about this with my studio manager, even the like actual brands I follow, like brands that only sell things like clothes or, you know, ceramics or something, I just won't open it. Like, you know, like it's just there and I'll open it when I want to open it. But I also think that, you know, we're talking to artists, we're talking to musicians, and we are dealing with sensitive people. And so I think like there is a level of detachment you have to take to your newsletter so that you are not going to be upset when people unsubscribe. Because every time I send out a newsletter, we get unsubscribes. And the larger your newsletter list grows, the more unsubscribes you will get. And that's totally normal and it's totally okay.
Yeah. Yeah. To not take it so personally. Because, like, your newsletter isn't for everybody, just like your music or your photography or whatever you do is not for everybody. And that's okay. But you're only going to find that out by to keep sending the newsletters. Again, like in the creative world, it's very easy to just send one email. The whole world didn't change from that one email. Well, I'm going to take another month or two to send something. I hate getting into the whole, like, you have to, but like because I also think too, like, if you're not going to send every week, someone else is. Someone else is doing the branding. Someone else is telling the cool stories. Someone else is doing that. And so, not that you have to keep up, but like, you got to kind of, there is kind of sort of a bare minimum you need to do here.
I also think that, again, I'm like thinking about who might be listening to this, and they might be musicians, they might be photographers, artists, creatives. You know, I get a lot of therapists. I serve a lot of therapists. I am not a therapist, but I serve a lot of them. And I want to suggest to the artist, to the musician, to the creative, how can your newsletter be a playground? How can it be another fun creative outlet? Like, do you have a creative outlet that fits the container of the newsletter? Do you take pictures? Can you share your song lyrics and process? Like, how can you make it fun? Do you want to play with design? Like, I send memes in my newsletter, you know, and I send a mood board of the week. Like, it's just fun. I send like playlists. Like, I sometimes I just send like, I call, this is another thing I want to share. And again, I share it in my class, and I share this in ways to make the creative process easier. If you are having a conversation with a friend and your friend is like, oh my God, I've never heard of this thing. Or they're like, you know, a mini mind blow, or you're having a DM with a friend and they're like, oh my God. Find a way to confidentially, like respectfully put that in your newsletter. Hey, have you heard of this thing? Or hey, have you heard of this like hack for recording or whatever?
Sure.
Like, you can just share resources, and this is how you become a value to the people who are opening your newsletter. And it's kind of fun. Like, this is another thing I'll just say. I want to like solve problems for people. People get afraid that they have to choose a format, that they have to like, you know, choose a niche or do the same thing over and over, because
schedule.
If you have ADHD, you're like, everything's exciting to me. You don't have to do that, because there is this genre of newsletter, I think, that is really fun, where you're not quite sure what you're going to get. You know, will it be a playlist one day? Will it be, you know, my top 10 favorite places to eat when I'm touring in Cincinnati? Like, you know, it's like, you don't know. And I think that's also kind of fun too. It's like, make folks be like, what are they going to send me this time? Like, maybe it's like a fun treasure trove surprise box. That's another way to approach it. It's like, you don't I think that like so-called branding and marketing is sort of toxic and poisonous, especially to the creative brain, the naturally curious, the naturally moving, the naturally flexible creative brain. Some of the best artists of our times start at one place, and then every album or every era, like think about David Bowie, like, you know, they like great artists evolve and great artists change. Your newsletter can do the same thing. You're like, okay, I'm going to talk about food for, you know, 2 months. And now I think we're going to talk about grief and how I dealt with grief and how this album helped. You know, like, you can flow. You don't have to stay the same. You don't have to keep the same format. But for some people, they might like that. You might like that structure. You might want like 3 things of the week, my top playlist of the week, what I learned, boom. And you can just send it out. It doesn't have to take like all your creative energy. It can be a fun little project that you're doing to explore another form of expression and connection.
Yeah. It also goes to, if we're talking about this in the terms of marketing your work, of getting the word out about your work, and you mentioned it too, of like, how can I have the greatest impact with the least amount of time? That gives you then X amount of hours a week to do your work, to make your music, to take your photos, to do this, which in the grand scheme of things, is going to make everything easier down the road anyway, because you're becoming a better artist, you're becoming a better vocalist, a musician, a painter, or whatever, a sculptor. Like that, like spending time on that is going to get you further than spending more hours and figuring out more hacks on social media.
1,000%. This is the other thing. This is what I tell my students. It's a longer game, like like a newsletter game. It is a longer progression. It takes longer to get signups and things like that. But if you have a great newsletter, even if you have a good newsletter, like it will stand on its own. Like, this is another thing. I will have folks share snippets of my newsletter on social media and tag me. So it's like it will just do the work for itself on its own, and it ends up being much more sustainable in the long run. Like, for example, I'll just use an example from my own life that literally just came up this week. I'm doing an in-person event in Los Angeles. Social media, this is like social media versus newsletter. Social media cannot segment my list to tell me who lives in LA.
Nope.
Touring bands, you want a newsletter, look to see the features. If you are a touring band and or you even want to be a touring band 2 years from now, if you even want to go to other countries, pick a newsletter platform that can tell you whereabouts people are. I sent out one newsletter to everyone on my list who only lived in LA. We sold out the early bird, we sold out the scholarship, and now we only have 15 slots of, the regular workshop. And that was off one email that maybe took me 35 minutes to write, right? So if I had posted that on social media, I have no idea of what I'm doing. I have no idea who's seeing it. I have no idea if people in LA it's just is not as effective or efficient, Yeah.
You'd have to set up a schedule too, like, because not enough people see them each time. You'd have to set it on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, like multiple times, different time zones, and it's a pain in the neck.
And musicians or artists or creatives, you would have to find a way to hide it, because now these platforms, whether it's Substack or Substack or Instagram or Twitter or X or whatever the hell any of this is,
sure,
they are so sophisticated, they can tell when you're promoting something and they immediately squash it. So you have to find a meme and then hide your information, and then it's the seventh slide, and so it's just madness. It's madness. So you have to outsmart the algorithm and dance for the algorithm and repeat and repeat and repeat. And meanwhile, I'm here sending one newsletter and I have half my workshop filled. It's just let's work smarter. Let's work with more precision. Let's save everybody time, effort, and energy. It's 2025. We've got other things to focus on,
Absolutely. What would you say, because for yourself, you've been doing this, would you say dating back to 2016, right?
I started my newsletter on MailChimp in 2016.
2016. So I talked to a handful of people, same boat. I started my email list in 2009, this, that, and the other, and it's great. How, though, the big question for anyone starting this then is well, how do I get people onto my email list now? But now I have to go on Twitter and talk about it and try to get people what are some of your thoughts on that? How to get people into a list if you haven't been doing it for the past 10 years or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, you can absolutely use traditional marketing strategies such as, a freebie, a lead magnet, we'll send you we're talking to musicians, or we're using musicians as our kind of test subject, or the person might be listening to. Yeah. I could think of 9 trillion ways that you could get folks on your list. One is just I want to also share what I've learned about marketing to creatives. It often works really well when there's some sort of due date, when there's some kind of do this and then on this date you'll get this, or sign up and then you'll get this class for the next month. There just has to be some kind of time-based incentive, right? So okay, sign up by February 1st, and we're going to give you a live 20-minute concert, secret, just for our newsletter subscribers,
Yeah.
20 minutes. Or like, I'm going to do a Q&A, a live stream on this date. And so if you sign up, you get the link. Like some kind of incentive would be amazing. And then you get to like connect with your people, which is super fun. And so that's like if you're a musician, or it's like you could do like a newsletter or a booklet or a PDF of what you shared, my top 10 inspirations for this record, and or like a code for your next record or a code for your merch or something like that.
Yep.
But kind of make it seasonal and maybe talk about it and promote about it on social media for like maybe a month, maybe 2 months, and then give it a rest and then maybe switch over to something else. But what I will say is, again, what I have at the bottom of my newsletters is if you know someone who would like this or appreciate it, forward. If you're the friend, sign up, because I want to operate again in the punk ethos. I want the friends of friends. I want, the folks who are already my people. I want them to tell their friend. I want it to feel organic and like an organic community. And I don't want anyone to feel like they're, I don't want anyone who doesn't want to be in my newsletter list or in my community to be there. So like telling people, pass it along, tell a friend, but you're talking about distribution, and we have to think about ways to promote that are sustainable, but that actually are effective. So going on podcasts, pitching a podcast tour, like Seth, I just really liked your work. I emailed you. I was like, hey, do you want to connect? Like, I feel like we could have a good conversation.
Yeah.
And you were like, sure. And here we
Let's do this.
are.
Yeah.
So if you do like that to 5 people a week for a month or something like that, you'll get a couple of folks, and only do it to people you want. Like, I'm not out here doing it to people I don't want to talk to. I'm connecting with people I actually want to have a connection with. So if you're a musician, you could be like, oh my God, I love this podcast. You can pitch yourself, and that is an art. And that is an art because you're a music writer and you're a journalist, but reach out to people. And over time, this is the other thing about not being on social media. A podcast interview has way more legs than a social media post. If you have friends who have newsletters, hey, like, can we do a swap? I'll shout you out, you shout me out. Like, let's promote one another. Let's help one another grow. Like, it's not that hard. And if you are a creative, you probably do have a community or several people who are also creatives or that want to be. And you can just be like, hey, I'll shout you out. You shout me out. Hey, I'll repost your thing, and I just really want to reiterate having it be authentic. Like, if you really like this person and you like what they're saying, shout them out. Like, be like, hey, do you want to do a trade? Like, it goes a long way, and you get to connect with really awesome people.
Right. Yeah, especially thinking too of like how we've like kind of handed off that responsibility to social media platforms. Like, they're getting the word out, and hopefully the algorithm works for them, and their posts get seen. Whereas I've seen it a lot, like less of people boosting each other or talking about one another. I've seen that a lot with bands. I see on Substack notes, like, people are just like, hey, look at my thing, look at my thing, look at my thing. Instead, like, if you just say, like, look at this really cool thing that so-and-so did, and you tag them, guess what they're going to do? They're going to share it with their audience. And then the people are going to see that you're associated with it. Like, it's, again, in an authentic way, not in a weird growth hack way, but like by pulling each other up, by making it more of a community. Like, I've written about this, like, social media hates this offline community that we have. Like, we're on a platform that they can't control. They're not serving ads here. Like, this video that will eventually be published somewhere, like, there's nothing like monetized through that or from that. They're not getting any data from that. To them, this doesn't even exist, and that's beautiful.
It's amazing.
Because I'm going to share it with my audience, you're going to share it with your audience, and that's how it can be. Like, that's how we did it before social media. We could do
We just created things because we wanted to. We just connected with people because we
Mm-hmm.
were interested in them. Like, it's like we're bringing this back, y'all. Like,
Mm-hmm.
privacy is the new luxury.
Yep.
Like, little secret portals, little rabbit holes that people stumble upon in wonderment. It's like coming back. There's these
Yes.
themes of mycelium networks and, you know, quality over quantity, and like
Mm-hmm.
really focusing on who you want to connect with, why you want to connect with them, why it's important, and also why it's fun. Social
Yeah.
media has become so unfun.
Mm-hmm.
Like how can you make your newsletter fun? Like, again, I share memes, I make stupid jokes. It's like I'm just having a good time out
Mm-hmm.
here, you know? And if you like it,
Yes.
you like it, and if you don't, that's okay. Like, there's someone else for you, you know?
Yeah. It takes me back to your point of like the small groups and stuff. Like I remember clearly fifth grade, uh, or no, ninth grade. Fifth grade, I knew the kid was a rocker because he wore a Bon Jovi shirt. But eventually, then in why is I have celebration stuff going on? I don't know why. Bon
Maybe they
Jovi,
heard
is that a
Bon
keyword?
Jovi.
Yeah. All right. Is it his birthday? But I don't know where that came from. But
I loved it though.
yeah. So it threw me off. But eventually, yeah, in high school we got together because they played guitar and I played bass and like that. But we found like our small niche of weirdos. Like we would acknowledge one another in the hallways and stuff like that. And eventually you got up the nerve and you talked to them because they wore a Bon Jovi shirt and like you had something to connect with. And like, yes, I think smaller and smaller niche finding out people like you said with sharing memes and stuff like that. Some of that stuff resonates more with some people and like can relate to that. And that's the path to like, yes, I like what this person's saying. It opens up that door, and then they can read more of your work and be like, heck yes, I love this. I'm going to subscribe.
1,000%. Yeah.
So yeah, with just how social media has throttled and limited, and what I hate so much, and what saddens me so much, and why I'm right still for all these years about this is just like there's so many creative people out there that think that their work doesn't mean anything because social media doesn't promote it, and which is such a bummer. Like people have given up making music or their art because well, it only got 5 likes. Why even bother doing this? And without
I yeah. I feel really blessed and really lucky to be older
Mm,
and to have started playing music and making work and art in the 90s.
mhm.
And I really we're going to see that trend of just making work because you enjoy it, not making work for an algorithm, you know, focusing on, to paraphrase Rick Rubin, the creative act.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
I really see that that is going to be continuing as people become more and more disillusioned and want to take their power back and want to take their energy back. You know, again, I remember in the 90s, you flyered.
Yeah.
You know,
Handing out flyers. Yeah.
you handed out flyers, and like there I'm not saying we're necessarily going to go back to that, but I do think that there is going to be like we're in this awesome paradigm where if you are strategic enough and you put in the legwork, so using newsletters and using technology can really help you. And so think about how it can help you so that you can focus more on real life and more on art and more on fun and relationships and all of the things that humans came on the planet to experience and explore.
Your point of relationships is huge because it reminds me of a quote I kept seeing from Meta Label back in the day, before they even released Meta Label. But they said we've become lonely content creators. Like a lot of artists and everything just sitting in their spaces being lonely content creators. They have no one around them. They have no feedback. The only validation is from social media, which is a nightmare. And so, but by bringing more people together, and even to your point of like smaller Zoom rooms, like I do a call every week with my paid subscribers, and it's like amazing. We have like almost 10 people in my call last week, and it's like, oh, only 10. Well, yeah, it's 10 people. It's so much energy, so much good vibes. We're like riffing on this,
Yes.
riffing on that. People from
Yes.
all over. This photographer talking to this playwright, this, that. They're like,
Yes.
who are all these people? Like, okay,
Yes. It's cool.
it's so cool. But like, but to bring that together, to not try to do this as the lone soul, like, genius kind of thing. Like, it's better together.
And when, to your point, like 10 whole people, I feel like we're coming on our completion because we're starting to come back to full circle, is like, those are 10 whole universes,
Oh, yeah.
10 whole worlds. And I think the like numbers of it all, the numbers game sucks all of the soul and the heart and the connection, which is what we're like at the end of the day, whether or not you're a hermit, an introvert, prefer one-on-one, whatever, like we're here to connect. And
Mm-hmm.
artists especially are here to connect and are here to share. And that's what we're here to do. Like relationships and serving each other is part of why we're here on this planet. So I think if we can focus more on that, if we can focus more on the work itself, if we can focus more on connecting with like-hearted and like-minded people, like you and I, this is an example, like we're so different. Like I'm sure we're very different, right? We might not have met in another way, but we have a shared set
Mm-hmm.
of values
Yeah.
and ethics, and that's what unites us. And as long as you have that, it doesn't matter if someone's a photographer or a playwright or an owl watcher or a chef. Like you have this shared camaraderie of values and ethics that are really going to be currency moving forward. And so that's what I think creators need to be focusing on, as well as taking a step back from that false dopamine hamster wheel of, trying to grow a following on social media. Like it just doesn't seem smart, effective. It's draining our life force. And by taking the energy that you would use on social and putting it into a newsletter or meeting with people in small groups, having meet and greets, workshops, whatever it might be, that is going to be better for everybody in the long run. Yeah.
Yeah, because the less time spent on social media and feeding those algorithms and getting lost in the doom scrolls and watching all the videos that you can't remember 4 minutes later. Like, yeah, being around other people, just talking about this stuff. And even just the idea of like doing that once a week for an hour can sound like so much, but think
You
of
spend
people's
an hour a day on social media scrolling and you
right.
don't remember anything that you did and you feel like shit and you wonder why.
Exactly. And so, I mean, I have people in my life that I have like scheduled 1 hour Zoom calls with every week, like on Mondays or what, like this, that, and the other. And like that, it's so much more life giving and so much more inspiring than try to like, what am I going to do? Watch another YouTube video of how to do marketing? Like, I'm going to get so much more, even if we're not directly talking about the marketing. That's another magical thing too in all this is like when I started my newsletter, I was talking about like the nuts and bolts of landing pages and a little more segments and this, that, and the other. And then in the last year or so, I'm like, I'm going to take pictures in the woods and like get ideas from the like, and I've been moving that into my writing, which has become a little more, I don't know, magical maybe. I don't know. I didn't set out to do that, but like it kind of happened. But also in the past year, it's been more true to me and myself of how I want to operate. And my, my subscriber count and all that has gone up as a result.
The trees will share more about authentic, effective marketing than any like YouTube bro.
Right. Like I go out and I'm in the woods and I don't have a notebook with me to talk about conversion rates. Yeah. Or I'm not listening to marketing bro podcasts or I'm like trying to make sure my heart doesn't explode going up a mountain. And then at the end of on Mondays and Fridays, when it comes time to write a newsletter, it's like, yeah, I got this because I haven't been looking at the social media all that week or watching all those videos all that week. Yeah. So much of the answer is doing the thing that's so true to who you are and like what brings you joy, I think, in all this. And like, if you could find that and get closer to that, like everything around it is just going to grow. What was that? Was that a thumb thing? What did I just?
There's some
What,
like energy happening. There's some energy work
what is
I just haven't.
Riverside doing over here? Jeez, I didn't even know we had all these fancy things. So, can we finish up on? I just want to touch on two of your things with paid subscribers. I also see you have a Patreon community as well, which looks fantastic and energetic. You have some sold out tiers on there and stuff like that. Like, how can you speak to that? Of because I know you have like the store, you teach, you have and you Patreon and a paid new like.
Yeah.
How does that come together? How do
Yeah. So I am so glad you brought that up. This is like specifically for the neurocomplex ADHD creator. Don't do what I did. This year I'll be streamlining everything.
Okay,
So
okay. All right.
I'll be ending some things and beginning some things. It really was very, and I think this is normal for folks who don't know about business. And also I think it's for folks, as we were talking about, as you evolve and grow and change, you're like, okay, you have to, and you know this, Seth, you have to try something to know if it will work for you.
Absolutely.
And so business and creation is this process of like, I'm going to try this for a year. I'm going to try this for 6 months. Did it work? Did I like it? You know, how's it going? So I had a podcast, not really understanding how much time it was going to take to create it. And I said to a friend, speaking of like not Googling anything, I was like, I just don't think I can do my podcast anymore. I'm paying an editor. I'm paying all the hosting. You know, it costs money and it costs a lot of time.
Yep.
And she said, why don't you just start a Patreon and see and give it time and see if the Patreon can support that. And so it did. But I want to move over to your point about secret small meetings. I do want to move over to a more membership idea, which I'll keep a very accessible price point to folks who just want, you know, a couple of supportive pieces a month. But then we're going to move into a membership model that I'm really excited about in 2025.
Cool.
But the other thing I think that is important just to share for creators, like this nuts and bolts things. Another thing happened where for years I have been channeling and sharing, I call them tarot scopes for each like sign every month. And I've been doing it for years. And I at one point, I think it was last year, I thought to myself, I can't do this anymore. It takes days. It's a very large, energetic, you know, undertaking. And I was like, you know, I just can't do it. And I thought to myself, you know, I have a couple friends on Substack. They're loving Substack. I had thought I was too late to the party with Substack because, you know, it was started for so long ago. But I thought, again, I'll bring music back in. I saw Andre 3000. Okay. And it was one of the best concerts I saw last year.
Yeah.
It was around the spring equinox. It was like a very spring equinox vibe. And he was sharing about the inception of his record. And really, he was sharing about how like insane it was to start playing the flute. He doesn't know how to play the flute. He's not trained. You know, he's all just making it up as he goes along. And he said he heard a voice inside. This always stuck with me. He heard a voice that said, just try it. Just try. Just try it. And so I'm taking this with me and I was like, just try it, Sarah. Just put your tarot scopes on Substack, put a paywall on them, let everyone on your newsletter know that it's moving. But again, what I want to reiterate is I had been doing this for years. It wasn't just a new thing I was starting. I had thousands of people reading them. And so I had folks who would pay to get them because they valued them. So that's also something you can think about as a creator is if you have something of value that you already create or make, whether it be outtakes, whether it be process notes, whatever, gear, like this is the, you know, this
recipes.
Recipes is my lighting setup for my last shoot. You know, these are valuable. If you're saving people time, energy, if you're helping people, if you're serving people, that is valuable. So anyway, I put that on Substack behind a paywall just to see what would happen. And then the other rule, so I'll close up now, but I have 2 rules for Substack. I think this is really important for overgivers, people who are neurodivergent, people who don't know what to do and need structure. Give yourself an energetic blueprint and give yourself a structure. So for me, my energetics of Substack is set to receiving. I'm welcome, meaning like I am ready to receive and to be poured into on Substack. I'm ready to see if there are these people who appreciate the free labor and the free work I've done for a decade or whatever. So that's like number one, is like I'm on reception mode. And the other thing is like, is it fun? Is it interesting? Is it easy? And so it's like, if I have something in my mind and it'll just take me 30 minutes to share, I'll like, put it into a share on Substack and share that with everyone. And on Substack, the other thing I do is I don't have a set structure, meaning my business. So I have a business. We've served over 22,000 people over the last decade, right? It's a business. Very, very businessy. But on Substack, I like just want to have fun. So my business, like this newsletter comes out Mondays. People know it comes out Mondays. Substack, I'm just like, is it Tuesday at 9:00? Like, I just want to have fun. I don't want to see it as another thing to do. I like having that energy. And when you're a business owner or creator, I always tell people, have that energy with like one aspect of your creative life or your business. This is just for me. This is just for fun. I just want to explore new forms of creation on Substack. I don't want it to have to sell something or mean anything or be good or be perfect. I just want to explore this messier, kind of more in process side of me. So that's kind of what I got to share. I think that this feels complete and it feels good. Yeah.
I love as well, like to not have, you don't have to have this all figured out. Like I've, by kind of necessity, I've been, I haven't had a full-time job since 2006. Like, yay. But like, shit, I've been figuring stuff out month to month. Like, it's
Yes,
like
you have.
a lot of years there. Thankfully, it's still afloat. But like, yeah, the idea of, and I'll see this a lot on Substack or other places, but just like, okay, yeah, Mondays I'm gonna put this out, and then on Wednesday I'm gonna do, and it's just like, yo, just you're the boss. Like, do what, like, nothing needs to be so regimented. And I always fear too when I see Tuesdays is gonna be this, it happens 2 weeks and then it just stops. Like, just like instead of just put the thing out that you want to put out. I love seeing that so much more. Like, this is what I'm doing. This is what's coming out for me right now. But really the big point of you saying that, and I hope with me saying that, of like, I'm still figuring this stuff out.
Oh yeah.
Like accounting software. It's 2025. You'd think I'd have that completely figured out, but like December 27th, my accounting software shut down. Bench just went away. They're like, yeah, we're closed indefinitely, like forever.
Wow.
You can get your data like next week. That was all my 2024 financials, bookkeeping, all that stuff. You gotta figure it out. Like, so even when we think we have it figured out, like, to just be nimble, just have fun with it. Like, I mean, yeah, haha, my financial, I have it back now. But like, as much as we think the people we look up to have everything figured out, like, it's not the case a lot of the time. So just have fun with it. Try different things. Try different. And I love seeing creative people do this. Cassidy of Dedicate Your Life to Music. Totally, like, in the last 6 months has changed their offering from like, it's this big open thing to like, no, that's invite only now because I'm protecting this energy. And this is like,
oh, that's a big energy in 2025. Big energy is like, oh no, actually I get to decide who I have, like this really cool stuff I want to share. I want to keep the energy of the container in integrity. I get to decide. Not just anyone can have access to me. It's reciprocity. It's like, I'm so glad you touched on that, because that's the other thing. I think as creators, we could be like, I'm just happy to be here. Like, oh, you liked my song, or like, oh, no, no, you are valuable. You are amazing. You are worthwhile. You are a wonderful human being with a heart of gold. Like, you get to decide who gets to come into your container. And that goes for like your larger life. I hope folks are listening, right? It's like not just anyone can come in. No
Yo.
no shoes, no sir, no shirt, no
Right?
shoes, no sir. Like you can say like, you know what, we're not a good fit, or like you can absolutely do that. And I love that. That is going to be a major theme moving forward as we think about, well, who do I want to serve? Who do I want to be in relationship to? I get to decide that. Yeah, I love that.
Musicians too, I've been seeing this more and more. Like there's some artists that like, I don't want to play bars and like
Yep.
dingy venues.
1000%.
Like don't.
I want to
Like
play
there's
parks. Like
yeah,
in LA we have I can't remember their name now. This is going to bother me, but there's literally a group who just plays outside and parks in the afternoon. Some of it is through Leaving Records, and I can't remember who else. But it's like, yeah, I want to go to a park on 3 o'clock and listen to music. Yes,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, for music and everything to music, poetry, like poetry written on like phone booths, you know, or magazine, like just scraps of like whatever around, like why not? Like it can exist in so many different places and we can still just make it up as we go. I love that. So Sarah, thanks so much. It's almost an hour here. I always go into these calls going like, I hope we can, and the energy is always like, yeah, it always comes around to this of like, we can keep going, but like, this is so good. Thank you for reaching out. First of all, like you were right. I think we had a lot of the shared energy and thinking behind a lot of this. So
thank you, Seth. I really appreciate what you do, and thanks for being you and for being so generous.
absolutely. You too.